Do you want a financially secure future, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones as well? This is Generations of Wealth, the podcast that breaks down the most effective wealth building strategies you can easily apply to your own life. Join investor and international best-selling author Derek Dombek in exploring practical tips and sound advice on building a profitable business, creating a powerful brand, or getting into the thriving world of real estate investing. This is your chance to create your very own financial roadmap to live your vision, love your life. Let's begin this discussion with your host, Derek Dombek.
Welcome to the Generations of Wealth podcast. I'm Derek Dombek, your host. Podcast where we talk about living our vision, loving our life, and figuring out how to do so. Today, we've got James Kademan with me, and James and I actually recorded an episode for his show, which is the Authentic Business Adventures podcast, and had a great conversation both on your show as well as after. And James, thanks for being here. Why don't you just let everybody know a little bit who you are and where you come from, and we'll jump in.
Yeah, Derek, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you as well for being a guest on my show. It was good. It's fun to chat with people in the real estate world because that is not a world that I know very well, but I'd like to know it better. As far as what I have going on, I have a call answering service, calls on call. We answer phones for small businesses because many small businesses are not that great at answering their phone, which leads them to plateau. So we help them make some money that way. I wrote a book, the Bold Business Book, from my experience in owning businesses and helping others. I do a little bit of business coaching, not a ton, because I learned that in business coaching, you're trading time for money, which is exactly what I'm trying to teach people not to do. So I felt kind of hypocritical in that regard. And then I have the podcast, Authentic Business Adventures.
Where are you located at, James?
I am just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, where it's beautiful 3 days a year, I think.
Yeah, usually maybe. It's a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday.
Yeah, right.
Summer. Yeah.
Days where you're in the office. It's all good.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I knew you were from Wisconsin, but I had to get that out for the audience because not everybody that listens to my show is from the Midwest, but we do have, we're having summer right now.
Yeah, with a vengeance.
Yeah, so it won't last long.
No.
Well, let's start kind of at the beginning. Like, what got you into business to start with?
I went to school for graphic design, and while I was going to school, I was also a mechanic. And I learned, it was kind of interesting looking back at it now, how one thing leads to another, that you don't necessarily know where the path is going to lead you. It just does, especially when you're young and I'm going to dare say dumb when I was a kid going to college. So I'm working on this car, and it's wintertime in Wisconsin. And I don't know if you know, the people that know snow or Midwest, you get those huge chunks beyond the mud flap, or right in front of the mud flap. So I got this car in the lift, and you bring the car that's got all the snow on it into a warm garage, throw it up on the hoist. And those chunks of snow eventually come down. They don't just drip down. A lot of times they come down as one big chunk. So I had this huge chunk come. It missed my head, but it got right down my back. Like, right? The road salt, the snow, the slush, the dirt. And that's when I decided, I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. So that led to me looking for a job where I was still mechanical, but not getting snow thrown at me or dropped on me. So anyways, I ended up fixing printers for a living for quite a few years. And interesting thing is I got really, really good at it. And I don't mean that to gloat, because right now that's kind of like being a really good typewriter repair person. Like, you have a skill, but it's not very marketable. So anyways, at the time, color printers were just coming about. This is a while ago. And I was really good. It was fun. You get to see different people, and you got to see different people for 20 minutes or an hour or something like that. So it wasn't like you're stuck with them for 8 hours or something like that. So if you didn't like them, just fix your printer and move on. Anyways, I got really, really good at that. And I thought, hey, this is where I'm going to die. I'm just going to keep doing this. It's going to be amazing. I had that whole thing in my head, like what my dad had, I guess, or maybe his grandpa. I don't know, something where you get a job and you just stay there for 80 years or until you die. And that's how it goes. From there, I was not paid that well. And I kept being told by my boss, we're going to take care of you, James. Come review time. We're going to take care of you. We're going to take care of you. Anyways, review time comes. It's a February day, and we go in the little conference room, and I'm all excited because I'm like, this is where I'm going to make some bank. And the manager guy is there with the owner guy, and the owner guy gives me a piece of paper, and it says, here is your 40-cent raise. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, that's your raise. This is, aren't you happy? I'm like, no, this is garbage. This won't even pay for an extra lunch. And he's like, jobs are going to China, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't think repair jobs are. So anyways, instead of quitting at that moment, I decided I'm going to be done, but I was a little bit smart. So I said, I'm going to build my runway. So I decided that I would apply for other jobs. And this is back before smartphones and before most people had cell phones. So I put the business's phone number on the job applications so that anyone that was looking to hire me would actually call the job that I was at and schedule interviews. So I was, I'm going to dare say bold, maybe stupid. Who knows? Whatever. It's a look on your face, right? So anyways, they learned that I'm looking for a job because these places keep calling me. And eventually I got fired for attitude. Can't blame them. Anyways, from there, I worked for another place, wrenching on printers. And I thought, you know what? This is crazy. Why am I making other people rich? So I decided to go off on my own, start my own printer repair company. And we did well. I ran that for just shy of 8 years. And then I went to some networking stuff. And then in the business world, people know what networking is, right? You go into a room, there's beer or coffee, and it's a bunch of people trying to sell each other on stuff. And I met with a life insurance guy, and he's like, I want to learn more about your business. And so I'm like, whoa, that's exciting. This guy wants to learn about my business. I can sell this guy on printer repair, blah, blah, blah. So I meet him for coffee, and it turns out that he did not want to meet me to learn about my business. He wanted to meet with me to sell me life insurance.
I'm shocked.
I don't, yeah, right. Apparently I was the only one in the world that didn't know that that's his goal. So anyways, I'm like, hey man, I appreciate what you're doing here. I'm not going to buy life insurance from you, but I am curious. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking this guy seems like a moron, but I'm curious, how much money is he making? Because I wasn't making that much money. I was working very hard and I was doing okay with my own business, but it was a challenge, man, because I was trading time for money, right? You're charging hourly rates to fix printers and stuff like that. You're making money on toner and parts and stuff, but you're not buying a Ferrari or anything like that. So anyways, I asked this guy, hey man, if I were to say yes to this insurance that you're offering me, how much would you make? And he was cool because he was a younger guy and he's like, okay, here's the situation. This is what I would make. I think it was like 50% of the initial purchase. And then he'd get residuals until I either die or stop. I change insurance or whatever. And I'm like, wait a second. So if you get 100 people to do this, like you're making some healthy money. And if you do that every year for 5-10 years, you're doing really well. And you don't have to be that smart. You just have to be nice during one coffee meeting, more or less. Talk about death every once in a while, right? Little awkward conversation, but not the end of the world. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm working this hard. And at the time, Amazon was starting to get to be a big thing. So I was paying, there's three distributors really. I don't know if they're major ones. They're the distributors for a lot of the major manufacturers, Xerox, HP, and all that kind of stuff. So I couldn't buy a printer directly from Xerox. I had to go through one of these distributors and I had to pay those distributors like you pay for a Costco membership. But the interesting thing is when I would go to buy a printer from these distributors, my clients could go on Amazon and buy it for cheaper than what I could buy it for, which means that I couldn't even put margin on. Like that's a terrible way to stay in business.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where like you saw the margin shrinking, the business it's not going away, but it's certainly drying. And you're still trading time for money. So it seems like as much power and energy as I was putting in to grow this thing, I was actually just more or less maintaining marginal growth. I mean, barely keeping up with inflation kind of thing. So then I'm like, okay, I got to find a different game, a game where I'm not trading time for money and a game where I can find a multiplier of some kind. So sell the printer repair business. I already had the call answering service going, and here we are, a little bit smarter than where I was way back then. That's probably a way longer answer than you wanted, so I apologize for that.
No, it's fine. That's perfect. But you just said something towards the end that is interesting. You already had the call center thing opened in conjunction with this. What led you to open the call center?
So interesting thing coming back around, I had that printer repair company and it was myself, my cell phone, and then I had some technicians running around, which usually meant that I was mopping up the mistakes or helping them out. So I'm driving all over town. I had payroll due in a few days. And I didn't necessarily know how I was going to make payroll. I had money in the bank, but not necessarily enough to cover it. And I had a lot of IOUs. I had a ton of people that owed me money, but I learned about Net 30 after I opened my business, which is a terrible time to learn about Net 30. So I had all these people that owed me money, but you can't pay employees on IOUs. So I had this person call me up and I'm on the highway. So I answer the phone. I'm like, hey, whatever. And they're like, oh man, I was all set to give you my credit card number, but I can tell that you're driving. So I'll just give you a call back later. This is a person that owed me $600 for months. And so I'm like, no, I can take it. And they're like, no, I'll give you a buzz later when it's safer. And I hung up the phone. I was like, that's not great. $600 would have been enough to help me cover payroll. But I was like, they have a fair argument, right? It's not safe to be writing, driving, taking a call, right? Adding
Theoretically,
a cigarette, shifting.
that should be frowned upon. And
Yeah. So I'm like, for us to scale, I need someone to answer the phones. But adding to my payroll doesn't sound like a very good idea when you can barely afford what you have now. So I thought, I can't be the only small business that has this problem. So what if I got a group of businesses together and we shared a receptionist? And so I tried that, and there were a couple false starts. I got a business partner. She was helpful because she was in the virtual administration world. And together we started Calls on Call. But again, one of those stupid mistakes. We didn't start the business to make money. We started the business to solve a problem that we didn't necessarily have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my calls answered by this receptionist, which was great. She was a phenomenal person. And we had payroll for that company, for that person. And then the other companies that we had as clients for Calls on Call were essentially paying for her payroll. It was break even. And I was happy. Calls are answered for my printer repair business. So I say dumb because I should have been growing that company instead of growing the one that was dying. But I don't know. Sometimes you push so hard on that door that says pull that you think all I have to do is push harder.
Right.
So anyways, that said, once I sold Doc Jam's printer repair, then I realized, like, wait a second, this Calls on Call thing is, I don't want to say it's running itself, but it doesn't need me a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And we grew it to the point where it's profitable. It's doing well. I'm not trading time for money. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh, maybe I should use this thing, this tool that I've had for, at that time I had it for 4 years already, and just kind of didn't pay any attention to it. Now you're like, oh, that is checking every box that I need. So maybe let's go there. So that's how I ended up solving that phone answering thing.
So ultimately, is Calls on Call your main thing now?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Calls on Call is growing. Pandemic was good for us. There's not many things the pandemic was good for, but growing a call answering service definitely helped. And we were able to scale. Another thing with the pandemic, hiring locally, just terrible. I don't know what's like in your market or was in your market, but for us, up until the past 3-4 months, it was, I don't want to say impossible because there's obviously some businesses that are doing it, but it's a struggle. Very rare to run anywhere and not see a help wanted sign. I think that's turning around, or I feel like for us, it's turning around now. But anyway, so we started hiring people nationally instead of just locally, because when the government says, hey, funny story, you can't have an office anymore, you got to adapt. So if people are working from home, they can work from home anywhere. Their home doesn't have to be in our city. So that helped us scale because we could then target areas where a job like what we were offering would be incredible for that person because they're in some small town that they don't have a ton of opportunity, or they have some reason that they can't work outside of the home, whatever that is, good and bad. I guess we're learning that, but I want to say forced us to scale, which it's been good. So
are you only using people within the United States, or
we tried. Yeah, great question. They're all domestic. We tried for a stint to use some company out of the Philippines, and I don't think I've made a greater mistake in business than that. Now, in the end, it's experience, it's education. And the rule that I have is that education is expensive, whether you're paying for a college or paying for a company to do a job that they don't end up doing. Yeah, they were terrible, brutally terrible. What the salesperson said and what we actually got were two polar opposite things. So we tried. But yeah, no, all domestic, have to be.
Okay. And the reason I asked that is a lot of us in business are using virtual assistants, whether they're domestic or overseas. I can't imagine doing business without it anymore. And my full-time assistant, who lives in your area of the state, I mean, she's 2.5 hours away from me. She's virtual, of course, but then the people I have in the Philippines are phenomenal. I mean, but it has taken years and trial and error, not even necessarily knowing if what you're doing is right or wrong until often too late. But once we've got the right people in place right now from the Philippines, I absolutely love them,
Yeah. So this is not to say that it wouldn't work or doesn't work. I want to clarify here what we are doing, or one of the things that puts us above the majority, if not all of our competition, at least what I know, is the customer service aspect of it, the side. And what would happen with the Philippines people is we would have a system in place for them to follow, and they followed that system, but they followed it like robots. So for example, we answer phones for veterinary clinics, and a guy calls in and you can hear his wife crying in the background. He's got a cat. They they have to euthanize the cat, but their veterinarian is not available to euthanize. I don't remember why, if it wasn't because they don't do it or because it was busy, booked, whatever it was. He's calling this place, our client, to euthanize their cat. And he's told the cat's in a lot of pain, can't do anything for it. The cat was like 17 years old or something like that. So cat's got to be put down. And so this guy gives this story, lays it out, and the agent says, "What is your name, sir?" That was the first thing they said beyond hello. And so the guy kind of took a pause and he's like, Steve. And then the agent goes through and asks the questions to fill out the form. So zero empathy, zero compassion, zero, I'm a human, you're a human, let's talk to each other like humans.
Right.
It was pure. I'm not even certain that it was not a bot, like it was an AI. This is a few years ago, but I'm like, it was so to the point and exactly bump with zero humanity into it that I'm like, this doesn't seem even human. Anyways, I have a conversation with the managers at this Philippines place, and the managers, to their credit, they're incredible, super cool. If they were the people that were answering the phone, we'd probably still be with them. I don't even know if I'd have domestic employees, but they're not the people that answered the phone. They said very explicitly, we don't answer phones. We manage the people that answer phones. So we would take these random phone calls and do essentially audits on them. So we randomly land on this phone call with this euthanized or this cat, and the managers are like, we score this call a 9 out of 10. And I was like, whoa, 9 out of 10, tell me why. And they're like, look, he did according to our system that you created, he did the things. And I'm like, but there was no empathy, there was no compassion, he didn't show any humanity to help this guy, this caller that's having a rough time. And so the manager said, okay, empathetic statements. Okay, what are some examples of empathetic statements that we could put in the system? I'm like, wait, what? We have to tell people what to say word for word for how to be a nice person? So I guess a long story, a little bit shorter, is that we were trying to use a company that I think was built for answering phones for your cable company or your cell phone, or places where they really don't want you to call them. They want to annoy you into not calling them, right? Where we are answering calls for clients that those clients want you to call, and they want our agents to take care of them. So it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good fit. That's not to say it couldn't be a good fit, or if we explored more, it wouldn't be a good fit. But for the voice, the audio, that's a huge deal in our world. So I mean, with AI, who knows what's going to change over the course of years, but right now, domestic, as far as I'm concerned, is a must for the voice aspect of the phone calls.
Well, and I would agree. So we have domestic answering service that answers all of our inbound real estate leads. And the challenge that I have with any answering service, and I'd love your opinion on this because it's something that we struggle with currently. The first point of contact is whoever that person is answering that phone, right? And if they're having a bad hair day, it's going to screw up possibly a $20, $30, $40, $100,000 deal. And even now, I mean, we are considering changing from who we've been using for several years because the person that we used to have answering the phone, she exited. And now the person that is answering phone is not, she sucks. She's terrible, right? And I guess my challenge with the whole thing is how do you put a price tag, your service versus another service from a quality standpoint? Because you could have, I don't know how many people you have actually answering the phone, but let's just say you have a dozen, and it's a random, whoever's phone rings, they answer at any given time. So they're not assigned to me. So out of the dozen you have in that example, maybe 9 are rock stars and 3 are, they're okay. Well, that's my problem, is where we're considering going to, that's the scenario. They got a dozen people on the phones, but I don't have a designated agent that's always the one answering for me. How do you play that out in your world? Like, because it's you're rolling the dice as the client, right?
Yeah, you're completely correct. So I just had this conversation with an employee of ours, a newer employee, because what we do to, I'm going to say, help resolve that, but I will not say eliminate that because it's certainly an issue.
It's impossible. It's impossible to eliminate it. Let's be honest.
Correct.
Everybody's human, right? Everybody has bad days.
Yep. So we answer phones for a wide variety of clients. And a lot of times we have to shift, or every call, we have to shift gears. Really quick example, we have a landscaper, and we also answer phones for a therapist or a therapy group. I think they have 20 some therapists. So landscaper, somebody calls up, a caller calls the landscaper. We answer the phones, and this woman she's pissed. She's angry because the color of her landscaping rocks is not the exact gray that were in the palette of whatever design, right? And I mean, she probably laid down $70,000 on this landscaping project. So I get it, but just yelling, swearing, brutal. Anyways, we don't replace the rocks, right? We can't just be like, we'll be right there, right? Like we got to connect the people and do the things and get her happy through whatever means our client will allow. Another woman calls her 13-year-old daughter. They found out is suicidal. So she calls the therapy company and she's not yelling. She's not screaming. She's not swearing. She's actually, under the circumstances, pretty cool, pretty calm. And it was interesting to compare those two calls because we do call audits. So you randomly pick calls, see how people are doing. And it was interesting to listen to the difference in callers and their individual perspectives on the problems that they had in their lives at that time. The rocks aren't the right gray versus my teenage daughter is suicidal. Like you think like, hey, a rock's really that important if your daughter's suicidal kind of thing? Two different people, but you put your problems in perspective relative to what you have going in your life right now. So we have to be able to shift gears from that one angry phone call. And next time you answer the phone, it may be somebody that's got a problem that's bigger, but in the end, it's their problem in their life. They get to judge how big that problem is. So we have this whole customer service training that we send people through to help ensure that everyone on our crew is as tip top as they can be. That said, there are days that we come across phone calls where we're like, you could have done that better. To answer your question, what we do, the process that we have is that depending upon the size of the client, we'll get 3 or 4 leads on that client that those 3 or 4 leads get first dibs on the call. To have one person in an ideal world would be great, but people go away, people go on lunch, people go on vacation, insert any reason why that person's not answering. Maybe they're on another call, right? So we try to get in the neighborhood of 4, neighborhood of 4 people on each client. So those 4 crew get first dibs on the call. The client has one point of contact, but they can connect with those 4 people. And if there's routine callers, those 4 people are known. They get known by name.
Yeah.
To the point that we've had clients back when we had an office, we had clients that would come and drop off Christmas gifts for their leads. I didn't get a Christmas gift and the other people didn't get a Christmas gift because there's a relationship that gets built between our client and those leads. And it's on the verge of, I mean, you could even argue stronger than some employee owner, employee manager relationships because they're in relatively constant contact with each other. So there's just like any other relationship or any other interaction with a person, when you're talking with them a lot, there's a connection that happens. You start understanding nuances. You start understanding like, hey, when they say this, they really mean this. And there's a connection there. It also helps because if one of those people out of the 4 goes away, for whatever reason, now you still have 3 out of the 4. Now you can replace that one and you're only dealing with 25% of the population that you have to change and retrain and all that, rather than 100% of the population.
Right. And that was the scenario for us. We had 2 dedicated reps and the one left. And it was medical. It's not like she left and quit. It was But when we call just to spot check and we end up going to voicemail.
Oh,
I'm not paying a live answering service to end up in voicemail. And this is the challenge we're having is many of our leads are going to voicemail and we know we're losing deals. We know we are. So it's curious. I was curious for that reason. That's why I love this show, because I get to get answers for my own challenges all the time from my guests. It's fantastic. It's so self-serving, but it helps everyone else that's listening too.
No, I understand. I'm the same way with my podcast.
Right?
I learn stuff and I happen to throw it on the internet. So if it helps other people, that's great as well.
For sure. Well, let's go a little bit deeper on just what do you do, not only business, but I mean, the Generations of Wealth is all about living your vision and loving your life, trying to, have that world that you really just want to get up in the morning and be around. You finally built, calls on call. It doesn't sound like as much time as when you were in the printer business. So how does that look now? I mean, today, are you in 40, 60, 80 hours a week, or are you able to kind of enjoy life and
No, I have what I'm going to dare say is a Midwest work ethic where I always feel like I have to be working. And I'm not going to necessarily say that that's a good thing. I'm going to say that it's helped me build some things and accomplish a lot, but it's also one of those that I don't know how to relax. I like the idea of retirement, but I can't even imagine what I would do.
I'm right there with you.
So that's where one of those things where let's start a podcast and interview some great people. The podcast, it's not monetized yet. So in the end, that's, I'm going to dare say, donated time or something like that, right? You're just offering something back to the rest of the world. Hopefully they can get something. Well, hopefully they listen, because I know they'll get something out of it if they do, just like yours. Same thing with writing a book. Writing a book is great. It helps me get my stuff in my head out to the world. It has helped a lot of people, but you're not making money on it. So having Calls on Call has allowed me to essentially work more and not care or really think about the financial aspect of it.
Yeah.
So there's benefit to that. Great benefit to that. It gives you a freedom that I think the illusion is when you start a business that instantly you have all the time in the world and they're like, where do you want your yacht? You just get all the money, but that's not exactly how it works. So it took me some time to figure out what I can do to bring in cash financially, but also have the time available to enjoy it or to be able to do other things to help the world in other ways.
Well, and that's the part that I guess I get wrapped up sometimes in what everybody else is doing. Like I recorded an episode with another guest that'll probably be out before this one launches. And this gentleman has done 34 startups and has done a ton of business. And he's 3 years older than me. And we had an awesome conversation. And towards the end of that show, and if you haven't listened to that show, not you, James, but everybody else, if you haven't listened to that show, go back and listen to it. But his whole message was, I want to make sure that I audit weekly with my wife and with my kids so that we are living the life that we say we want to live, the way we said we want to live it. And it's very much vision driven, but I complimented him. I said, you took it to a whole new level, way beyond anything that I've done with the weekly audit of actually saying, okay, what did we do for last week? To the point where he had his 2 children tell him and his wife, give us a grade. How were we as parents for the last week?
Wow.
Right? Like, I mean, when I say audit, it's a full-on audit of business, his relationship with his wife, including their intimate relationship. Like it was, this show was great. And I'd give you all the title of it, but we just recorded it and it's not titled yet. So
all right, fair. Totally fair. I'll have to look for it.
Yeah. So anyways, I say all that to say this. Going out and building businesses and trying to just make money is great. But if you don't enjoy it, if you don't take a breath, what's the point? And to build something like you've done with Calls on Call and to finally realize, and I'm in the same boat right now, honestly, because I'm trying to grow Generations of Wealth. I'm trying to grow our real estate, acquisitions, everything that we have going on, our Circle of Trust Mastermind, which anybody listening can check out at reicot.com. Gotta throw plugs in there when we can. But all of these things, right? Like it's hard to not lose sight and lose focus of the important things because we can get sucked in. I know I can get sucked in, and most of us are entrepreneurs that are, involved in listening to a show like this.
Yeah, it's tough to stop. I remember I was camping with some buddies, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they were all talking about the shows that they were watching on Netflix. And I didn't know any of the shows. Maybe I recognize them by name or something like that. But all I'm thinking is, when do you guys have time to sit down and watch all these shows? Like, and then they're talking about the sports stuff, or they're sitting down and watching a football game or baseball game for 3 hours. And besides watching my kid play baseball or basketball or whatever, I'm not sitting there for 3 hours. I can't sit idle that long. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think, like, yeah, this is a different crowd than what I like talking to. I guess, I mean, they're nice guys, they're cool guys. I've known them for years, but they've been running down that W-2 path, which is fine. And I'm just on a different journey.
I had the same challenge because I coached my son's Pee Wee football team for 3 years, and now he's beyond Pee Wee and I don't get to coach anymore. But I coached with 3 other guys, and we had great conversations. I knew all of them personally. They're great men, great people, but conversations were hard beyond football because we have nothing in common anymore, right? They have their jobs and they're all showing up at practice bitching about what happened at work that day. And I'm showing up at practice like, well, I just had a closing, or I just talked to a great guy named James on a podcast, or like I'm all upbeat and they're not. And it's hard when they're great people, but you still have to separate yourself from that negativity or it'll bring you down.
Yeah, we were just at a a tournament. I don't even remember what sport it was for, but we stayed at a hotel, and this hotel's got little water slides. All the kids on the team are playing in the pool, the water slide, they're having a good time. And the parents are sitting in the pool area, just essentially staring at each other, talking about the umps or the refs or whatever it was. They're essentially talking about their kids. And I'm like, I get it if there's kids are a big deal, right? Kids are huge deal, but I don't think that should be the only thing you talk about when you're not sleeping. So I was having this conversation with another parent there and trying to talk about something other than kids. And it wasn't going anywhere. So then I was like, screw this. Let me see what's going on. Because we're staying overnight here a couple nights. I look at my phone and I find out that there's like one of these townie celebrations. I don't know, I think it was Cheese Fest or something like that. Whatever it was. It happened to be in the little town that we were in. It was 6 minutes from our hotel. They had a band playing there. So I'm like, hey man, we have, I don't know, 20 kids. That means that we have in the neighborhood of 40 parents, plus or minus, right? I don't think we need 40 parents to watch 20 kids. So how about half of us or more go to this Cheese Fest thing, just check it out, get out of the hotel. We're stuck in here for a while. And you could tell people are apprehensive. And I'm like, okay, what if just the wives go? I'll stick around here, watch the kids. I mean, the kids didn't even know we were there, right? We could have all disappeared. They wouldn't care. They're old enough. Anyways, we're just there to make sure no one drowns in the 6-inch water slide. Anyways, they're like, Anyways, one dad and I end up going. We see this band, incredible band. It cost, I don't even know if I laid down $20 for tickets to get in, see the band. It was like dirt cheap, incredible. And we had a blast. The next day, I think I had at least 6 parents. They're like, did you go? Did you go? Did you go? Like they wanted to know about this thing because they were just sitting in the pool. I'm like, yeah, it was a blast. And every time I go to stay at some hotel with my kids and all, or my kid, I should say, and the families and all that jazz, instead of just sitting at the pool, well, either I'll be the one sitting at the pool so that other parents can go, or I'll be the one that goes with the crew that's going to go get out and actually experience life a little bit other than being the lost puppy for your own 10-year-old kid. It's just a weird dynamic that I'm like, ugh. Got to get out of here.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I suppose we probably need to wrap this up, James. Man, I appreciate you giving us some time today. How can people follow you? Is there anything we can do to help you grow Calls on Call? Are you looking for clients?
Always looking for clients, right? It's grow or die in my world. So I imagine yours as well.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. So callsoncall.com is the website for the Calls on Call answering service. The podcast that I have is Authentic Business Adventures. You can find that on YouTube as well as all the podcast channels.
Which is a fantastic show, by the way.
Especially with that Derek guy as a guest.
I didn't say that. I just said it was a fantastic show.
Yeah, I've been doing that since late 2017, and it's been very interesting. I mean, I've had some incredible guests on there, you included as well. I've had some not so great, but I mean, that's just the way it goes. But it's so interesting how much you learn just by taking the moment to just chat with someone with no agenda other than to hear their story and see what they know that you don't know. It's amazing. There's some people that I thought, I don't know how this is going to go. And then you chat with them and you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you did all this stuff. Or even if you get one little tidbit, it's amazing. Totally makes it worth your time.
My favorite part about the Generations of Wealth show and all the shows I get to be a guest on, it's the preconceived notion that we have. Like you come on as a guest for me and I was a guest on your show, and we have a little bit of background information about each other before the show starts, but the relationships that can grow and the networking from just being on or hosting a show, it's unbelievable. I mean, like I said, I usually record 2 or 3 shows in a day, kind of stack them up as they get released, kind of pull back the curtains for those of you listening right now, right? And that's what most of us do. We try and get 2 or 3 shows done, and then, it takes time to get them all produced and edited. And so I may have conversations with somebody specific to real estate investing, and an hour later I'm on a conversation with somebody about life insurance, and an hour later it's really crazy. And you all get to listen to it after the fact, but man, those days are exhausting, and you're also so jacked up. Today you're my second interview, and I've got one more, so it's fantastic. But like I said, Authentic Business Adventures podcast is a great show. You guys definitely check that out. If you're looking for Calls on Call, which is callsoncall.com, check that out as well. James, thanks so much for giving us your time today, and I look forward to since we don't live that far apart, I
Right.
really look forward to us getting to know each other better as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Derek. Yeah, reach out anytime.
Definitely. So we'll wrap this up. Thanks for joining the Generations of Wealth podcast. Please like, share, do all the things to help us get our show out there, as well as other shows like James. Jump on the Generations of Wealth Facebook group, get interactive on there as well, and join us on the next one. And until then.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Generations of Wealth. May your newfound knowledge help you in leveling up your own strategies to get through the many obstacles to your money-making processes and bring you much closer to the financially secure life you truly deserve. Continue filling up your accounts and further polish your financial tactics by listening to more episodes of the podcast at thegenerationsofwealth.com. Because in your wealth-building journey, there is no other way to go but up, giving you the chance to finally live your vision, love your life. That's all for now. See you on the next one.
Go out, live your vision, love your life.